COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So here is the normal lung of a human, showing respiratory tract, trachea, and then leading into the lungs. In the lungs are the bronchioles, and which are opening into the alveoli, and it is showing the normal histology. But when there is COPD, what it causes the loss in the shape of the bronchioles, and they become lodged with the mucus, and the wall of the alveoli, they are destroyed, and few of them they become large, and this all causes the increase in the resistance to the airflow. So now we come to the major diffuse obstructive disorders. They are emphysema, chronic bronchitis, bronchiectasis, and asthma. So we are going to discuss one by one what is emphysema, what is chronic bronchitis, bronchiectasis, and asthma. First, let's have a look on emphysema. So emphysema is defined as the obstructive pulmonary disease characterized by permanent enlargement of the air sac, but distal to the terminal bronchioles, which is accompanied by the destruction of their wall, but without significant fibrosis. So here in the emphysema, what happens is there is permanent. Importance is that the destruction is permanent and it is distal to the terminal bronchioles, but the fibrosis is not very much significant here. So emphysema affect the structure which are distal to the terminal bronchioles. Now here the question arises, what are the structures which are distal to the terminal bronchiole? So they are the respiratory bronchioles, alveolar ducts, alveolar sac, and the alveoli. And these all respiratory bronchiole, alveolar ducts, alveolar sac, and the alveoli, they are collectively known as the acini. So they are destroyed in the emphysema. So here is the diagram showing the anatomy. What you can see is the terminal bronchiole, they are opening into the alveolar ducts, and then the alveolar ducts are opening in the alveoli. So distal to the terminal bronchiole is the respiratory bronchiole, the alveolar ducts, and the alveoli. This whole pulmonary acini, this is involved in the emphysema. Distal part, not the proximal part. The distal part after the terminal bronchiole is affected in the emphysema. So now we come to the types of emphysema, which is classified according to the anatomical distribution, which part is involved. So the different types of emphysema is the centriacinar emphysema, panacinar emphysema, distal acinar emphysema, and the irregular emphysema. Among these four, the central acinar and the panacinar, they cause the significant airway obstruction. And among the centriacinar and the panacinar, centriacinar is 20 times more common than the panacinar emphysema. Now we are going to discuss these four types one by one. First, the centriacinar or the centrilobular emphysema, which is also known as the proximal acinar emphysema. So in this type of emphysema, the central part, as the name tells you, the centriacinar or the centrilobular, it means that the central part of the acini or the proximal part of the acini is involved in centriacinar emphysema. Whereas the distal alveoli is spared, it is not affected. Only the proximal part of the acini is involved in it, whereas the distal part of the alveoli, they remain normal. Okay, and this type of emphysema is common in cigarette smokers, and it is often associated with chronic bronchitis. Sometimes both conditions are going simultaneously. Emphysema and the chronic bronchitis, they are going simultaneously, because if the patient is cigarette smoker, then he may have emphysema as well as the chronic bronchitis. So the most common type of emphysema in cigarette smoker is the centrilobular or centriacinar emphysema. Now, this picture will clear you that this is the acini. And what were the structure which were involved, which are the part of acini, is the respiratory bronchioles, the alveolar ducts, and the alveoli. So when we are talking about the centrilobular acina or the proximal emphysema, so we are talking about the proximal part of the acini. So if the proximal part or the central part of the acini is involved, it is known as the centrilobular emphysema. Got it? Now, I'm coming to the second type of the emphysema, that is the penacinar emphysema. So first was the centriacinar emphysema or the proximal emphysema. Now I'm coming to the penacinar emphysema. Pen, the word is telling you the pen, the whole acinar is involved in penacinar emphysema. So it is a type of emphysema in which the acini is uniformly enlarged from all levels of the respiratory bronchiole to the terminal alveoli. Whole of the acini is involved in this type of emphysema. In contrast to the centriacinar, penacinar occur more commonly in the lower lung zone, and it is usually associated, the penacinar is usually associated with alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. So what is alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency? The question arises. And I know you are a bit, you people are a bit smarter, and many of you know what is alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. It's a genetic disorder, yes, in which the body does not make enough protein, alpha-1 antitrypsin. And what does alpha-1 antitrypsin do? It protects the lung from the damage which is caused by the protease enzymes such as elastase, such as trypsin. And these protease enzyme, elastase, trypsin, it is usually released as a result of the inflammatory response to the tobacco smokers. When someone smokes, so enzyme like elastase and trypsin, it is released and they can cause damage to the lung. So naturally, the natural protection which is given by Allah is alpha-1 antitrypsin, which protects the lung from these enzymes, elastase and trypsin. But if alpha-1 trypsin is deficient, if the person is not producing alpha-1 trypsin, then what it will cause? It will cause the damage to the lung, because there is no protective mechanism against elastase and trypsin. So the lung will start damaging. So then the emphysema which is related with alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency is penacinar emphysema. Pen, whole. So whole of the acini is involved in this type. So penacinar is responsible for about 2% cases of COPD. So here is the diagram which will clear you a little more. So this is the acini. Again, what is acini? The respiratory bronchiole, the alveolar ducts, alveoli. So in the penacinar, whole of the acini is involved. The respiratory bronchiole, the alveolar ducts, the alveoli, whole of the acini is involved in the penacinar emphysema, as compared to what we talked about in centrilobular emphysema. The central part is involved. Only the central part is involved. The proximal part is not involved. It remains normal. But in penacinar, whole of the acini is involved. Got it? Now we come to the third type of emphysema, that is the distal acinar emphysema. So the names tell you the distal acinar, the distal part of the acini is involved in this type. So, and the proximal part, the proximal portion of the acini remains normal. The emphysema is most striking adjacent to the pleura. So mostly the distal acinar emphysema, it is mostly seen just adjacent to the pleura along the lobular connective tissue septi and at the margins of the lobules, and it occur adjacent to the areas of fibrosis and scarring and atelectasis. So it is usually more severe in the upper half of the lung. So the distal SNR emphysema, it is usually in the upper half of the lung, and for this type, centrilobular, no, pen SNR, it is usually involving the lower lung zone. Okay, so this is another difference. The pen SNR involves the lower lung zone, whereas the distal SNR emphysema, it involves the upper half of the lung, mostly upper half of the lung is involved. Okay, and distal SNR, distal part of the SNR is involved, and in the pen SNR, whole of the SNR is involved. The characteristic finding in the distal SNR emphysema is the presence of multiple cystic structure called the bullae. This is very important point to be remembered, and this is usually asked in the MCQs and in the Viva, favorite question for the Viva also, that in which type of emphysema we find bullae or multiple cystic structure. So this is distal SNR emphysema. Why distal SNR emphysema? Because the distal SNR emphysema occurs just below. Mostly it involves the area just adjacent to the pleura. So we find the cystic structure called bullae. So this the cause of this type of emphysema is unknown. Like for example, for the pan-SNR, the cause was mostly the alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. For the proximal SNR, the cause was cigarette smoking. But for the distal SNR emphysema, the cause is unknown, and it mostly occurs in the young adults who present with spontaneous pneumothorax. So, and the fourth type is the irregular emphysema, as the word is telling you, the irregular. So the part of SNR which are involved is not periodic, not specific, either the proximal or the central or the distal. The SNR is irregularly involved in this type. That is why the name is irregular emphysema. So irregular emphysema, so the name, because the SNR is irregularly involved. Some proximal part is involved, some distal part is involved, some is not involved, some part is not involved. So irregularly involved, the SNR is irregularly involved in irregular emphysema. So these are the four types of emphysema we have discussed. First, again, I'm repeating because now I will go on the next. I'm going to go on the pathology. So till now we have discussed the types. First one was the proximal SNR or the central SNR emphysema. The second was the pen SNR emphysema. Third was the distal SNR emphysema, and then the irregular emphysema. I think it is a bit clear now to all of you. Now I'm going to the pathology of emphysema. Inhaled cigarette smoke and the injurious particles, they cause the damage and inflammation. So what happens when there is cigarette smoking or when there is injurious particles inhaled? Excuse me. What it causes is diffuse variety of inflammatory cells, and the mediators, they are released, and the several proteases, they are released from the inflammatory cells and the epithelial cells, and they cause the breakdown of the connective tissue. Reactive oxygen species are released, and the inflammatory process starts. And it is also superimposed by the airway infection. This all causes the damage to the alveoli, leading to emphysema. Now we come to the histopathology of emphysema, which is the main topic of today's lecture, the histopathology of each type of chronic obstructive lung disease. So here is the histopathology of emphysema grossly. For the central SNR emphysema, as we find the normal alveoli as well as the emphysematous air spaces. So grossly, with the naked eye, what we see is the emphysematous air spaces with normal air spaces, along with pigmentation. Why pigmentation? Because normally in the central SNR, it is involved with the smoking. Mostly the patients are normally the smokers. So what we find grossly on the lung with the naked eye, what we find is the pigmentation anthroposis in centriacinar emphysema. Whereas in panacinar emphysema, what we see grossly is all the air spaces are more or less evenly inflated because whole of the acini are involved in this. So we find that most of or all of the air spaces are inflated. Whereas paraseptal emphysema, as it is usually adjacent to the pleura, and we have talked that bullies are seen. So normally we find inflated subpleural spaces with thin wall, and we also see the bully formation on gross examination with the naked eye. So here is the gross picture of these three types. First, the top one is the centriacina. What you find is the normal looking air spaces along with the dilated air spaces, emphysematous air spaces. You find both of them in centriacina because some are normal and some are emphysematous. Along with the pigmentation you find in the centriacinar emphysema. This is anthroposis, okay? Because most of the patients are cigarette smokers. That is why you find anthroposis pigmentation on the lung and along with the dilated as well as the normal air spaces. Panacinar emphysema, all spaces, air spaces are evenly enlarged. So we find all spaces enlarged in the panacinar emphysema. Whereas the paraseptal emphysema, normally it occurs adjacent to the pleural spaces. So we find subpleural dilated air spaces. This is the pleura and subpleura under the pleura. So what we find that there are subpleural spaces in paraseptal emphysema. And we also find the bully formation. So here is the lung of a patient with emphysema, and you can see the dilated air spaces. These are the dilated air spaces in emphysema. Again, another specimen showing a smoker's lung with cystic spaces due to destruction of the air sac wall. So these are the dilated, I don't know, here's my arrow. So these are the dilated air spaces, and these are just below the pleura. So you can see the cystic spaces here. Now this diagram is showing the bully formation. So enlarged bully apparent on the surface of the lung. These are the bully formation, blab-like formations on the surface of the lung, and this occur in the which type of emphysema? Yes, central panacinar or the paraseptal. Yes, this is paraseptal emphysema, in which you will find these bully formation. Okay. Now we come to till now we have discussed the gross picture, things which we see with the naked eye when we are concerned with a patient of emphysema. Now we are coming to the microscopic features of emphysema. What we find on microscope are the air space enlargement. The size of the air space in the background parenchyma will be a good reference to how much air spaces are enlarged, whether they are enlarged or not. Because in the background parenchyma you will find the normal air spaces and the area which have emphysema. You can compare it with them with that. So you find that the air spaces are enlarged. First finding. Second, what we find is the fragmented alveolar wall. Alveolar walls are damaged, so we can see the broken alveolar wall along with mild fibrotic changes can be seen, and inflammatory infiltrate, of course, it can be mild to severe. Inflammation can be seen on the microscope. So here is the H&E stain, hematoxyl and eosin stain of centriacinar emphysema with focal fibrotic changes. So there is my arrow gone. Yes, here it is. So what you see is the alveolar damage. Alveolar wall are damaged here. See here is the normal alveoli. They are small. as compared to these alveolar spaces are enlarged, and the alveolar wall are damaged, and mild fibrotic changes are seen, along with inflammatory infiltrate is also present in these spaces, intra-alveolar spaces. Inflammatory infiltrate is present also. Okay. So again, another picture, and other hematoxylin eosin stain, H&E stain of emphysema. So these are the alveolar spaces. The walls are destroyed. You can see, you can appreciate, and these spaces are enlarged. Now the pan-acinar emphysema, in pan-acinar, whole of the acini are involved. You will find a homogeneous picture. All of the alveoli are enlarged, and the alveolar walls are destroyed. So you can see that in between alveolar wall is not present. They are destroyed, and they have changed into large air spaces, along with mild fibrosis, and the inflammatory infiltrate is present. Interstitial emphysema, so you can see the honeycomb is also seen on the right side, and these are the air spaces. They destroyed alveolar wall, causing the enlarged air spaces, fibrosis, and the inflammatory infiltrate. Now, up till now, we have discussed the emphysema. I think it is a bit clear to all of you what is emphysema, and now I'm going to the next topic. That is the chronic bronchitis. So, chronic bronchitis, this is the second type of chronic obstructive lung disease. There are 4 chronic obstructive lung disease. The first was the emphysema, and the second is the chronic bronchitis. And now I am going to talk about the chronic bronchitis. Chronic bronchitis is diagnosed on clinical grounds. Emphysema can be diagnosed on morphological basis and on the radiological basis, but chronic bronchitis is diagnosed on clinical ground. So it is defined as the presence of persistent productive cough for at least 3 consecutive months in at least 2 consecutive years. It means what? That patient is having productive cough with the sputum, not the dry cough. It should be productive cough for at least 3 months, for continuous 3 months, and in continuous 2 years. For the 2 years, in 2 years, continuous 2 years, the patient has a complaint of productive cough for continuous 3 months. So then the patient will be diagnosed as chronic bronchitis. It is more common in cigarette smoker and urban dwellers in polluted cities. So as it is also common in the cigarette smokers, so cigarette smokers can have both conditions, the emphysema as well as the chronic bronchitis simultaneously. Okay. Now the clinical features of chronic bronchitis is cough and sputum production, and hypercapnia, increased carbon dioxide, hypoxia, decreased oxygen, cyanosis, and progressive, if the disease progress, so it can lead to hypertension and sometimes to cardiac failure. Now we come to the histopathology of chronic bronchitis. So grossly, with the naked eye, what we will see is the mucosal lining of the large airway is usually hyperemic. They become red and swollen by edema fluid, and it is covered by a layer of mucopurulent exudate, mucopurulent secretion. And the smaller bronchi and the bronchioles, they become filled with secretion, mucus. So this is the gross picture of a lung with chronic bronchitis. So you can see that the airways are dilated. These airways are dilated and they are hyperemic. They are swollen. So this is the gross picture of chronic bronchitis. Now we come to the microscopic examination of chronic bronchitis. The diagnostic feature of the chronic bronchitis in trachea and the large bronchi is the enlargement of the mucus secreting glands. So what we will find is that the mucus secreting glands, they become enlarged, they become there is hyperplasia of these glands. The number of these glands are increased. In the early stage, there is hypersecretion of the mucus in the large airway with hypertrophy of submucosal glands in the tracheobronchial tree. And later on, if the disease becomes severe, it causes the increase in the goblet cells in the small airway, contributing to the excessive production of the mucus. And this excessive production of the mucus can lead to airway obstruction. This will increase the resistance to the airways, which we discussed on the very first slide, that in the COPD there is increased resistance to the airflow. So in chronic bronchitis, what causes the increase in the resistance? The excessive mucus production. And why the mucus production is increased? Because there is hypersecretion of the mucus, and there is increased amount of mucus glands. The number of the mucus glands are increased. Along with this, there is chronic inflammatory infiltrate, which can be mild to severe. So this is the HNE, hematoxin and eosin slide of chronic bronchitis. These are the submucosal glands, and you can see that the number of the submucosal glands, these glands are increased. The number is increased. So there is hyperplasia of the submucosal gland. This is the cartilage, and these are the glands. These are the glands. Okay. So the number of the submucosal glands are increased, and these, when the number is increased, it will cause increased secretion of the mucus, leading to the obstruction of the airways. So at high power, you can see this is the airway, epithelium of the airway, it is destroyed. Okay, airway destruction is there, along with chronic inflammatory infiltrate. These are the chronic inflammatory infiltrate, lymphocytes, neutrophils. They are seen here in the ASPs. Now we come to the asthma, the third chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Till now we have discussed the emphysema and chronic bronchitis. I think, I hope that it is clear to you all. Now I'm moving towards the third chronic obstructive disease, that is asthma. So asthma is defined as chronic inflammatory disorder of the airway in which many cells and cellular elements play a role. In particular, mast cells, eosinophils, T lymphocyte, and the macrophages, neutrophils, and the epithelial cells. They all play a role in this chronic inflammatory disorder of the airway, and it causes the recurrent episode of wheezing, breathlessness, chest tightness, and cough, particularly at night and early morning. Major factors that contribute to the development of asthma include genetic predisposition. The major factor is the genetic predisposition to the type 1 hypersensitivity, that is the asthma, and the other causes can be chronic airway inflammation or bronchial hyperresponsiveness to variety of the stimuli. Like for example, the pollen grains and the fumes and the dust, they can all cause the bronchial hyperresponsiveness. So we come to the pathophysiology of asthma for atopy and extrinsic. First is the initial sensitization of the type 2 helper cells. What they cause? They causes the release of interleukin 4 and 5, and interleukin 4 and 5 causes the release of immunoglobulin E by the B cells, along with activation of the mast cells and the eosinophils. And when there is second exposure, the re-exposure to the allergen, this causes to the release of the mediators from the mucosal mast cells. And when the mediators are released, histamine is released from the mast cells, that causes the bronchoconstriction, edema, mucus secretion, vasodilation with increased vascular permeability. And so influx of these inflammatory mediator, which is stimulated by the cytokines released by the mast cells and epithelial cells, T lymphocytes and other cytokines. They causes the release of major basic protein from the eosinophils, and this causes the epithelial damage and the airway constriction. So this diagram will clear you more about the pathogenesis of the asthma. So what happens is when a patient or a person inhale some allergens or come in contact with some antigen or allergen, what it causes? It causes the interaction of causes the antigen antibody interaction. So these allergens, they are taken away by the antigen presenting cells, which are the macrophages. Okay, these antigen presenting cells, they present this antigen to the T lymphocytes. Then the T lymphocytes, these are the naive T lymphocytes, they are converted into type 2 helper T cells, and they release interleukin 4, 5, 10, they are released. So interleukin 4, it acts on the B cells, and the B cells start producing immunoglobulin E, and interleukin 3 and 5, they act on the eosinophils. Now, when the immunoglobulin E is released, it comes in interaction with the mast cells, and the mast cells are now activated. They are ready for the second exposure. If the patient is again exposed to the same allergen, then they are ready to fight. So what happens when the patient is re-exposed with the same allergen? Then these mast cells, they releases the mediators of inflammation, the histamine. And this histamine, they cause the bronchial hyperresponsiveness and the airway obstruction. I think it is clear. The pathogenesis of asthma is clear. I'm again repeating. What happens is when a patient come in contact with the allergen, that is called the antigen. The antigen, they are taken by the antigen presenting cells, the macrophages and the dendritic cells. These antigen presenting cells, they present the antigen to the T lymphocyte, naive T lymphocyte. The T lymphocytes are converted into the type 2 helper T cells. The type 2 helper T cells, it releases interleukin 4, 5, 10, and other two. What interleukin 4 does, it acts on the B cell, and the B cell start producing increased amount of immunoglobulin E. And immunoglobulin E, it comes in contact with the mast cell, and now the mast cell is ready for the second exposure. And when the patient is again re-exposed to the antigen, same antigen, the mast cells, they causes the release of the histamine, and this histamine causes the bronchial hyperresponsiveness. What it causes? It causes the hypersecretion of the mucus, airway, muscle contraction, swelling, bronchial membranes, because the vascular permeability is increased, so it causes edema. This all causes the narrowing of the airway, leading to wheezing, cough, shortness of breath, and tightness in the chest. I think the pathogenesis of asthma is clear to you all. Now we come to the clinical features. So for the atopic or extrinsic asthma type, it is related to type 1 hypersensitivity. Generally, it is due to allergens, and it begins in childhood. And this type is triggered by the environmental allergens, that is danger, dust, pollen, and the food. And normally in atopic asthma, family history is positive. The second type is non-eosinophilic asthma, in which it is a subgroup of atopic asthma, but not associated with eosinophilia. Eosinophil count is not increased in this. Interleukin 8 recruiting neutrophils are an important mechanism in it, and patients tend to be less responsive to corticosteroids. Whereas in atopic asthma, they are very responsive to corticosteroids. Then in non-atopic or intrinsic asthma, non-immune type, and it is usually due to the aspirin injection or pneumonia, cold, stress, or exercise, or after the respiratory infection like rhinovirus and parainfluenza virus. And in this type, usually the family history is not, we don't find positive family history in non-atopic or intrinsic asthma. Then is the occupational asthma. It is due to the exposure of fume, dust, gases, and chemicals at the occupational sites. Drug-induced asthma is usually associated with drugs, and the most noteworthy is the aspirin. And aspirin is related with recurrent rhinitis and nasal polyp. If the patient is allergic to the asthma, he can develop rhinitis and nasal polyps. In the status asthmaticus, you find unremitting attacks, and it is a severe type of asthma which can be fatal. And usually, the patient have a long history of asthma in the status asthmaticus. Now we come to the histopathology of uh, asthma. So on gross examination with the naked eye, what we find is the lungs are distended due to air trapping, due to overinflation. We find an overinflated lung, and you may find small areas of atelectasis. Atelectasis means the collapsed lung. Part of collapsed lung can be found because of the damage to the alveoli. So those the areas in which the alveoli is collapsed, those areas will not get inflated. So you may find the a small areas of deflated areas along with overinflated lungs. The most striking finding is the occlusion of the bronchi and the bronchiole by the thick mucus plug, and which contain the whorl of shed epithelium. This is known as the uh, Cushman spirals. So this is very important that this can be asked that in which type you find Cushman spirals and the Charcot-Leyden crystals. So we find them in the asthma, and where you find the Cushman spirals, they are found in the thick mucus plugs, and you find the whorls of shed epithelium in it. And what is Charcot-Leyden crystals? These are the numerous eosinophils, and they become crystalloid, and they contain the eosinophil protein galactin-10. So this is a gross picture of the lung of asthmatic patient. This is a distended lung. Again, hyperinflated lung of the asthmatic patient. And this is the mucus plug. You can see here what we usually find in the asthmatic patient, that the airways, the bronchi and the bronchioles, they are obstructed by the mucus plug. And see how thick is the mucus plug is. And they contain, these mucus plugs may contain the epithelial cast, and they form the Churchman spiral. Now we come to the microscopic features. So what we find in asthma is the thickening of the airway wall. The thickening is because of the edema. Sub-basement membrane fibrosis can be seen. Increased submucosal vascularity, which we have discussed, that because of histamine, there is increase in the vascular permeability, and when the vascular permeability is increased, it can cause edema, it can cause the thickening of the airways, and there's increase in the size of the submucosal gland, and the goblet cell metaplasia is seen in the airway epithelium, and there's hypertrophy and the hyperplasia of the bronchial muscles. So this is the H&E stain of a patient with asthma. So on the right side, you can appreciate the bronchial cartilage at the right side, and the bronchial lumen. It is filled with the mucus. Here, this is the bronchiole, and it is filled with the mucus. But in between the bronchial lumen and the cartilage is what? Is the hypertrophic muscle. This is the smooth muscle. This is the smooth muscle. So there is the hypertrophy of the smooth muscle. There is edema, and there is inflammatory infiltrate, and mainly the eosinophils, because an allergic reaction, eosinophil plays an important role. You all know that the number of eosinophil is increased. So on a histopathological examination, you find increased number of eosinophils. Again, this is a high power of the same picture, and these are the eosinophils. You can appreciate these are the eosinophils. These are the eosinophils. So the eosinophilic count is increased. These are the eosinophils. These with the red background. These are the eosinophils, and they are increased in asthmatic patients. So whenever you find the eosinophils, increased amount of eosinophil, you must think of the allergic reaction. Now, the other finding, what we find is the Charcot-Leydig crystals in the airways. And these are the crystals you may find in the asthmatic patients. Along with the inflammatory infiltrate, you may find the Charcot-Leydig crystals. Now we are coming to the fourth type and the last type, that is the bronchiectasis. So what is bronchiectasis? It is the permanent dilation of the bronchi and the bronchioles. And why the permanent dilation? Because of the destruction of the smooth muscle and the supporting elastic tissues. And it is typically as a result of chronic necrotizing inflammation. Because of the chronic necrotizing inflammation, what it causes the destruction of the smooth muscle and the supporting elastic tissue of the bronchi and the bronchioles, and this leads to the permanent dilation of the bronchi and the bronchioles. And this condition is known as bronchiectasis. So the condition which are associated with the bronchiectasis is the bronchial obstruction, which can be because of some foreign body, because of some tumor, or the reason can be any congenital or the hereditary disorder. For example, cystic fibrosis, immunodeficiency state, particularly immunoglobulin deficiency. This will increase the chances of the infection, and when there is recurrent infection, it will lead to the destruction of the bronchi and the bronchiole, leading to permanent dilation. Primary ciliary dyskinesia, also called as immotile cilia syndrome. When the cilia are not working properly, they are not good enough to pass everything. What it will cause increased chances of having infection, leading to the destruction of the bronchi and the bronchiole, leading to permanent dilation of the bronchiole, or the necrotizing or suppurative pneumonia. It can also lead to bronchiectasis. Now we come to the clinical finding of the bronchiectasis. Bronchiectasis is characterized by severe persistent cough associated with the expectoration of the mucopurulent sputum. So what we find in the patient of bronchiectasis is cough with the mucopurulent sputum, dyspnea, rhinosinusitis, and hemoptysis. These are the findings which we see in the patient of bronchiectasis. Now we come to the pathophysiology of bronchiectasis. So if the bronchiectasis is caused by obstruction, because the bronchiectasis can be because of obstruction, or because there is bronchiectasis because of non-obstructive causes. So if it is obstruction, which may be due to tumor, foreign body, or the mucus, it causes absorption of the airway distal to the obstruction, leading to atelectasis and accumulation of intraluminal secretion. And in non-obstructive bronchiectasis, which may be due to pneumonia or atelectasis, it increases the negative intrapleural pressure, which exert an external force on the bronchial wall and causing them to dilate. So usually the left side did affecting lower lobes. They usually affect the lower lobes of the lung. Now we come to the histopathology of bronchiectasis. Grossly, what we find is markedly distended peripheral bronchi, usually in the lower lobe, and it can be traced at the pleural space. The distended bronchi, they can be traced at the pleural space, and the bronchial walls are irregularly thick. So on the gross examination, what we find is the destruction of the bronchi. So there is permanent dilation of the air spaces. These are the permanent dilation of the air spaces, and this lead to the recurrent infection because of the stasis of these air spaces. When they are permanently dilated, there is a stasis of the mucus within these dilated spaces, which can lead to the recurrent infection. So again, a closer view of the lung showing the focal. Where is my arrow? Okay, it's here. So focal area of the dilated bronchiole, which is extending to the pleural space. See, this is the pleural surface, and the dilated bronchioles, they are extending to the pleural surface, typically of the localized bronchiectasis. So now we come to the microscopic feature of the bronchiectasis. You find chronic inflammatory infiltrate, neutrophil, lymphocyte, macrophages, ulceration of the bronchial wall, causing the destruction of these walls, ossification of the bronchial cartilage, thickening of the pleura, and the inflammation and the fibrosis. And inflammation is variable. It can be mild, moderate to severe. Now this is the H&E stain of the patient of bronchiectasis. So this is the bronchi, and it is lined by the residual epithelium with necrotizing inflammatory infiltrate. These are the inflammatory infiltrate, lymphocytes, eosinophils, and neutrophils, and this is extending to the adjacent lung parenchyma. It is characteristic of bronchiectasis. This is it for today, and if you have, I am finished with my lecture. If you have any questions, kindly ask.
जी मैडम।
हाँ, क्वेश्चंस अगर किसी को
क्वेश्चंस होंगे वो चैट पर आएंगे, अगर जो भी होंगे।
तो अभी वेट करूं मैं स्टूडेंट्स का?
जैसा आप चाहें।
नॉर्मली क्या करते हैं, वेट करते हैं?
बस एक सेकंड, 1 मिनट के लिए अगर वेट करना चाहें तो करना, वरना क्वेश्चंस तो लोग पहले ही दे देते हैं।
अच्छा, तो वो तो आते तो आ जाते हैं ना अभी मेरे पास।
जी जी बिल्कुल आ जाते हैं।
सही, हाँ, तो वो आ तो नहीं रहे अभी?
नहीं, अभी तक तो कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं। तो आप बोलती हैं तो मैं एंड कर दूं?
हाँ चलो ठीक है। थैंक यू ऑल।
थैंक यू।
अल्लाह हाफ़िज़।